Chairman PBA, Board of PBA, Chairman PBS and the Steering Committee, banking, business leaders, senior practitioners, friends from the media, good morning and assalamu alaikum. I would like to add my welcome to all the international speakers, and I would like to congratulate the Steering Committee in terms of this absolutely stellar lineup of speakers and panelists. So a job very well done as you transition from the previous summit to this summit, moving from strength to strength. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about the macro environment before I come to the banking part. We closed the last fiscal year on a strong note across all matrices, starting with the fiscal side, a primary surplus, an all-time low fiscal deficit, debt to GDP ratio well below 70%, GDP growth closing at 3.7% on the back of strong rebound in LSM. And I will come back to the GDP growth part. The current account performance remains strong, supported by what was just mentioned, by record remittance flows. When the Governor State Bank talks to you, I believe tomorrow, I'm sure he'll go into more details around it, but we do expect our overall remittances for this year to close anywhere between $41 to $42 billion. And the value-added exports, because we talk about the dip in exports, and indeed, from the good side, there is a dip, but that dip is concentrated on the food side. Value-added, especially on the textile side, has continued to register year-on-year deltas. Again, as the Governor would mention tomorrow, in your session, from what I understand, FX reserves will close at about $18.4 billion for this fiscal year, which is higher than the estimates that we had earlier on in the year. The last thing on the macro front which I would want to mention is that after a hiatus of 4 years, we were able to tap international capital markets. We started with the Eurobond, and we did a trade, which was private placement, but given the demand, the green shoe option was exercised, and we upsized it at $750 million. And from my perspective, the most significant trade has been the Panda bond, because we have been at it at least for the last 7 to 8 years, and not tapping the second largest, second deepest capital market in the world has been a miss on our part. So moving forward with the inaugural Panda bond issuance, which had 5 times oversubscription, notwithstanding the credit enhancement that we had from ADB and AIB, there was a sovereign component in there as well, and we got a record low price for a 3-year issue. And we are not stopping here. We have just issued RFPs for Sukuks, for Eurobonds, and for the first time, dollar-settled rupee-linked bonds, because we do want to go back into the international capital market and extend the maturities of our international debt as we move forward. And from my perspective, a lot of these are going to be actually replacement trades. These are not going to be incremental debt that we have, and how we replace some of the bilat stuff, I think is going to be part of the picture as we move forward. Now, on the back of this, we saw, because जब हम बात करते हैं कि financial side पे क्या हुआ, macro stability में क्या हुआ, और फिर उसका कोई impact है in terms of the real economy or not, तो वो भी कुछ data points हैं which are actually quite encouraging, that the company registrations crossed 300,000 for the first time last year. 11 IPOs on the Pakistan Stock Exchange, which is a 20-year high in the last fiscal year. और जब कोई IPO करता है, आप सब यहाँ फाइनेंशियल एक्सपर्ट्स बैठे हैं, तो वो किसी वर्किंग कैपिटल के लिए IPOs नहीं होते, ये केपेक्स के लिए होते हैं. These are for new ventures, etc. So I think again this is very good news, and I'm not even talking about where the PSX is at this point in time, because I think the activity drivers are more important than the PSX numbers. और उसी में जो number of investors which have grown, and more importantly the Gen Z investors which are coming in, I think it's very, very promising from that perspective. And then the corporate profitability, which has returned to double digits, I think all they bode well for this fiscal year as we move forward. Now, we used some of this fiscal space which was available. I go back to the macro stability, माशी इस्तेहकाम की बात होती है कि जी what's the big deal? The big deal is that we use this fiscal space available when some of the exogenous shocks come in. तो पिछले साल जब 25 के floods आए, तो unlike 22, we did not go running for international appeals. We used the resources which we had mobilized locally for rescue and relief, etc., although this flood was more intense than the 22 part of it. But more importantly, how we used it for the budget for this year. पहली बात तो ये है कि इस साल का जो बजट है, जो I think ज़फर मसूद साहब ने भी जिक्र किया, this was led by the Tax Policy Office. As you know, the Tax Policy Office moved to the Finance Division. Tax Administration stays with FBR, and I'll talk about it in a bit more detail a bit later. So, इसका मकसद ये था कि when we talk about tax policy, when we talk about budget, we should be led by economic value considerations, not how you make the math work. And in this budget, we have made the first attempt to do exactly that. तो उसमें हमें जितनी हमें space available हुई, we focused on export-led growth, removing the advance tax, removing the super tax, low-cost subsidized financing, and continuing with the tariff regime. Because ये भी ironical है कि when people are looking for consistency of policy, a tariff regime which we rolled out last year, over the next 5 years, how we're going to reduce RDs, ACDs, CDs to make our industry more competitive by reducing the cost of intermediate goods and raw materials. उसी में से कुछ लोग आए वापस कि नहीं जी इसको इस साल suspend कर दीजिए. And I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet that we stayed strong, because that is how we are going to move forward. कि किसी जो policy है उसकी हमें consistency चाहिए, and inshallah in the context of this year we are also going to come up with a medium-term tax strategy as well, because I think that's also a very important ask. Businesses cannot invest, businesses cannot look forward without having a 4 to 5 year view on how the tax policy is going to move forward. And our tax policy office is now actively working, and they will do it in consultation with all the stakeholders, including the people present in this room and outside. इसी तरह जो सुपर टैक्स को हमने रिमूव किया, 50 करोड़ से जितने भी नीचे बिजनेसेस हैं उनको हमने वो abolish किया, because it's important to focus on the small businesses and the disproportionate burden that's on that. Then moving across, transaction taxes for construction industry were removed. We removed all duties on agriculture machinery, ADs, RDs, CDs, ACDs, all of them sifar. In terms of mechanization of agriculture, in addition to subsidized financing, especially for the small farmers. And then a lot of you are here, the disproportionate burden on the salaried class. So again, from a direction of travel, we thought it was important to do what we did. and more to do in that context. And lastly, in terms of broadening, so again, a very earnest attempt has been made to bring जो हमारे ताजर भाई और बहन हैं, the retailers, into the net. I'm very grateful to the Minister of State for Finance and Hamid Sarwar Saab, who worked with the organizations to get us to this stage where we have announced this and we are going to take it forward because we had to take a start from somewhere. आखिरी चीज़ मैं बजट के सिलसिले में ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि we in the Parliament have now bring in a new tax administration operating model. And I've said it in the Pakistan Business Council, at the Faisalabad Chamber, again to the PBA, that we would want to present you the detailed discussions that we had in the Parliament, because the Parliament has approved the new structure, because it's a new engagement model between the tax administration and the taxpayers, where the human intervention is going to be minimal. जो इनकम टैक्स ऑफिसर के डिस्क्रेशनरी पावर्स हैं, बिकॉज आज सारी पावर उसमें कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड है, हिम और हर, वेदर इट्स assessment, audit, notice issuing, recovery. That is all going to go away. All going to go away. And it's a very fundamental change because this is a model which is AI-led, technology-led, और जो notices आएंगे वो, you know, LLM models, algorithmic learning, machine learning, उससे आएंगे, and हो सकता है इसमें कुछ false positives भी हों. But I think we have to try a fundamentally different model to bring credibility and trust back into the tax administration of this country. क्योंकि ये जो सब लोग कहते हैं कि जी हमें फाइनल टैक्स regime कर दें, वो पॉसिबल नहीं है हमारे लिए. कोई 1-2 मिलियन का मुल्क हो तो हो सकता है, 25 करोड़ and that too growing at the level that we are growing, every single segment has to deal with the tax administration of this country. It's as simple as that. But हमारा दूसरी साइड पे ये होना चाहिए, आपके लिए हम सहल बनाएं, आपके लिए इसको ट्रांसपेरेंट करें, आपकी harassment, corruption, everything that's going on should go away. And this is a very fundamental change that we have brought as part of this budget. I just want to very quickly move in terms of the US-Iran conflict. The first order, from our perspective, has been managed relatively well. No shortages, no queues at the petrol stations or gas stations, no law and order situations, and you have seen what's happened in the rest of the world. Ab iske, from a first order impact, so I think so far so good. But इसके दो पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव थे. अगेन गवर्नर साहब आपको कल इसका जिक्र करेंगे. In January, if we were talking here, we would have talked about GDP growth anywhere between 3.75% to 4.75%. That was the estimate coming from the State Bank, from the Central Bank. By and large, from PBS, Ministry of Finance, we were agreeing with that. And we ended on the lower end of that, and the conflict certainly played a role in that impact. Secondly is a little bit of bump up on inflation. On the basis of that, you saw the MPC making a decision in terms of increasing the policy rate. But so ये दो ऐसी चीजें हैं which did get impacted by the conflict. उसकी जो थोड़ी सी जो flip side है कि हमने जो port की activity देखी, the kind of TEUs which were negotiated and settled, whether it was the Karachi port or the Gwadar port, were more than the entire of last year. So now Ministry of Maritime has to see, as we look at transshipment routes and trading routes, okay, how do we take this opportunity and make it a real permanent upside for Pakistan. दूसरा हमने देखा in terms of Roshan digital accounts. आम तौर पे मार्च तक कोई 180-190 मिलियन डॉलर पर मंथ आते थे RDA के थ्रू. And for the last 3 months, Governor Sahab, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we have seen consistently more than $300 million of inflows into RDA every single month over the last quarter. तो किसी चीज़ में भी ख़ास तौर पे किसी जंग की सूरत में सिल्वर लाइनिंग नहीं होती है. but we have seen both some of the negatives, both of the positives, and let's hope and pray that our leadership, Prime Minister, the Field Marshal, unki jo sustained efforts hain to move towards a permanent solution, we get there so that we don't have to deal with the second, third order impact. And in fact, if this conflict goes away, there is an upside which is difficult to quantify at this point in time in terms of growth and other measures for next year. Now let's come to today's conference. Access to finance, and therefore the banking industry, will remain absolutely critical in terms of our journey from stabilization to sustainable growth. Increased lending to SMEs, exporters, agriculture, manufacturing, construction, and IT industries is going to be mission critical. And as the chairman of PBA mentioned, I think we have moved in the right direction, but there's a long, long way to go. We had a very constructive discussion along with the governor, with the bank CEOs yesterday morning. और उसमें गवर्नर साहब आपकी प्रेजेंस का मैं मौजूदगी में मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि ख़ास तौर पे SME में I would want to announce a task force which should have CEO PBA, which should have CEO SMIDA, which should have chamber representation, we should have representation from the State Bank, we should have representation from Ministry of Finance. The State Bank should lead this, but we cannot have SMEs not getting access to finance going forward. It's as simple as that. और इसीलिए हमने जो इस वक्त refinance की और subsidy की जितनी स्कीमें रखी हैं, we welcome the large businesses, but there is a certain allocation for SMEs जो आपने उसको exercise करना है, because going forward, access to finance for SMEs cannot remain a lip service, cannot be left to 2 or 3 banks. It has to be an industry-wide effort. It's as simple as that. इसी तरह जो from the government side, जैसे अभी Chairman PBA ने जिक्र किया, we will continue to scale up risk sharing, partial guarantee schemes where appropriate. खास तौर पे जो SME और small farmers के लिए to mobilize private capital, we are committed to that. We have made allocations in this budget, and we will continue to step up. Also subsidize as required, especially for the export sectors. अगली चीज़ मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि while it might take some time, from the government's perspective, in conjunction with the State Bank, we will continue to do what we can to diversify government borrowing. पहली बात तो ये है कि government borrowing वैसे कम होनी चाहिए, although it's the lowest pace of growth in the last 15 years, as much as people talk about the absolute number, तो हमारी पूरी कोशिश होगी कि हम fiscal discipline को आगे लेकर चलें ताकि ये borrowing requirement ही कम हो. लेकिन जो undue reliance है on the banking sector, this has to go away. So whatever we are doing in terms of diversifying it, in terms of NBFIs, corporate retail space, ताकि ये जो बात होती है crowding out effect की, इसको हम किस तरह minimize करें, तो उसमें एक जो कल का एक initiative है, which is under the State Bank auspices, where Park Invest के नाम से, where corporates and individuals can come in and invest in government paper, starting with 5,000 rupees. And 18 June को the Ministry of Finance did a similar deal with Jazz Cash. और Jazz Cash के भी हमने उनके हो सकता है सारा जो client base है वो obviously हमारा target market नहीं होगा, लेकिन from our perspective at least 1 million out of their target market can actually come in. उसमें भी यही है कि 5,000 से आप government paper, especially T-bills में आप invest कर सकते हैं, और आज तक तकरीबन 1,500 investors उसमें आ चुके हैं. I would especially request the NBFIs, खास तौर पे insurance industry, you need to step up, because this also should be in line with your ALM models and everything else that comes along. So you have shied away from that till now, but you will have to step up in a very big way as we move forward. And deepening and broadening of the debt capital markets will indeed obviously remain a top priority, once again to reduce the pressure on the banking sector so that they can do more and more in terms of private sector lending. Now, areas where we can collaborate, इस पे अभी ज़फ़र साहब ने थोड़ा सा जिक्र भी किया, उसमें I know I'm out of time, but I need just 5 more minutes. अली हबीब साहब, अगर आपकी इजाज़त हो, तो एक तो privatization है, और privatization ये है कि ये this is not a fairy tale story कि ये government committed है कि नहीं है. So we started with a small bank, and then PIA, which is now securely in the private sector hands. There are 3 discos जिसका road show मुकम्मल हो चुके हैं, और there are 2 discos जिसके EOIs issue होने वाले हैं, और उसमें further there are 2 institutions, and as was mentioned, 28 institutions which have been handed over to the Privatization Commission. So the banks, in my view, this is especially all of you who have investment banking and structured finance teams, to come on the buy side, sell side, structured finance, M&A financing, इसमें भरपूर हिस्सा लीजिए. The second one is, which is an existential issue for Pakistan, which is climate change. So climate and sustainable finance, State Bank rolled out the green taxonomy guidelines last year. तो इसको आप आगे in terms of further accelerating your financing to renewable energy, water management, climate smart agriculture, ताकि आप थोड़ी सी alignment करें around your balance sheet allocations to the national climate goals. Now the last point, which is all technology, और आपने जिक्र किया कैसे आप partners कर रहे हैं in terms of digital journey, the cashless economy, which the Prime Minister himself is leading, but thinking slightly around the new economy as well, to AI, blockchain, digital assets. So इसमें, as you know, the Parliament passed the Virtual Asset Act 2026, which made PVARA a permanent statutory regulator with licensing and enforcement powers. तो पहली जो NOCs हैं वो issue हो चुके हैं to the exchanges, which happened in December 25, to Binance and HTX, and regulatory sandbox went live in March of this year. तो इसमें I think कि गवर्नर साहब इधर बैठे हैं, इन्होंने जो 2018 का इनका मेमो था उसको इन्होंने replace किया है, so that the banks can and may now open accounts for PVARA licensed WASPs under strict KYC, AML, CFT conditions. So it's a very fundamental change in terms of how we are looking at the new economy. Now, as we move forward, the regulated digital assets हैं, and every rupee moving through licensed FATF designated channels can move actually through the banking sectors. इसमें custody है, settlement है, fiat ramps हैं, treasury है. Now, with some of the banks earlier on the year, we have also looked at tokenization, and I'm grateful that आपने उसको कई use cases को आप खुद भी उसको देख रहे हैं. But from the government of Pakistan perspective, we are looking at the first use case in terms of tokenizing our outstanding international public debt, जो हमारा इस वक्त Euro bond है. Now let's see how that goes, and we will keep you posted. और उस पे अभी हमने RFP अभी issue किया है. Now the flip side of all of this is cyber, and of course all of you are very, very comfortable and you are working on your cyber securities through your CISOs, etc. लेकिन the reality is the way the new economy is moving, और इसीलिए कोई महीना 1.5 महीना पहले जब हमने गवर्नर स्टेट बैंक के थ्रू आपके साथ engage किया around what is happening with Mythos and what challenges it can bring up for the banking industry. So इसमें मेरी आपसे request ये है कि the cyber resilience is a shared national capability and is a national security aspect to it. So मेरी आपसे दरख्वास्त ये होगी, गवर्नर साहब भी यहाँ बैठे हैं, कि इसको आप ज़रूर आगे लेकर चलें, because while we are all on the digital journey, the new challenges which are coming up, we need to at least stay ahead of the curve. At the end, I would like to wish you a very successful and constructive conference, I looking forward to Chairman Sahab receiving whatever recommendations come out, not only in the context of banking, but your recommendations which can help us in Pakistan from our journey in terms of stabilization to sustain.